So many things in a sermon can be lost in transition. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about when in a message you want to go from one thought to another, that transition point between the two things, whether it's between an illustration and your next point or a point and your next text. Sometimes it can be difficult to navigate those transitions and do it well and smoothly. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 3 ways to navigate that tension and transition your sermons well. My name's Lane. This is Preaching Donkey. It's so great to have you joining me today. I am thrilled that you're here. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this where we help you preach and communicate better. I have a free gift for you. If you go to preachingdonkey.com/21 days, you can get my free 21-day guide to creating killer sermons. It's just for you. It'll walk you through a 3-week process or a 21-day process of creating a message. And so whether you're a novice and you're brand new to preaching or you've been preaching for decades, this guide will serve you well because it'll just give you another way or a fresh way or a new way to look at how to build a message from start to finish. So that's my free gift to you. Go to preachingdonkey.com/21 days and grab your free copy there. All right, so let's talk about transitions. Often I get emails from the pastors who subscribe to preachingdonkey.com and others on social media, and I'll ask them, what is your biggest frustration with your preaching right now? What do you really want to try to overcome, to try to get better at? And very often, especially lately, what I have been getting is I need help with transitions. I feel like I'm losing people in the transitions. I'm not preparing my transitions well. I'm just hearing a lot about transitions. And so as I talk to people, what I'm finding is that it's a common frustration of, okay, I've got these pieces of my message. Okay, I know I'm going to say this at the beginning, and then I know that we're going to go from this introduction material to this text, and then from this text, we're going to make these points, and after we make these points, we're going to do this kind of application, and once we do the application, we're going to try to cast vision to people. I just don't know how to get from piece to piece. And what I hear, and I've experienced this myself, where it can feel clunky because you do the introduction and you think, okay, now I got to go from this introduction to this verse. Is there a smooth way to do that? And what I've found over the years from my own preaching and from talking to other preachers and from studying how to write messages and then deliver those messages, what I've found is that so much can get lost in transition between when you write and when you preach. So the very first thing, the very first way that you can overcome this tendency towards things getting lost in transition is simply rehearse. Rehearse your messages. Because before I get into anything else that you can do in the writing, when you rehearse, that's when you're saying it out loud and you're thinking, oh gosh, I know I wrote this and it made sense to go from this to this, but I need a bridge. Transitions are just bridges. They're connective tissue between one thought and the next thought. And so if you can think of it like that, then you can bridge these thoughts, and often it takes rehearsing. It takes saying it out loud to realize that there's not a bridge. Okay, so that's just one thing. Before we get into anything, definitely check out things that I've taught on preachingdonkey.com about rehearsing. I've got a complete guide on there, and I might do a video about that soon. But rehearsing is just crucial if you want to do this well. So here's the thing, though. I want to give you 3 more things that can help you with your transitions. But the biggest thing that you need to understand is don't overthink them. Okay, your transitions are largely in your control. You get to decide how you go from one thought to the next, and your listeners are going to follow you. And so don't let this get inside your head and make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. Things can get lost in transition. However, you get to control and you get to decide when you're preaching how your listeners are brought from one thought to the next. And so if it makes sense in your mind, all you've got to do is get that out so that people make the connection between, okay, we were here and now we're going there. And sometimes you can do that with just a little bit of narration. Hey everybody, we talked about this and I want to show you how it relates to this, okay? So you're literally telling them, I'm going to show you, I'm taking you on this journey And that's why the journey that you're taking your listeners on is so vital. So essentially, transitions serve to connect one thought to the other. That's all they do. So I want to give you a few more things. The first thing is, obviously, like I said, rehearse. That's number one. Number two, outline well. Outline your messages well. So the reason why I say this is when you are outlining your message, I like to think of outlines in blocks, big blocks of things that you're going to cover. So the outlining method that I teach is a 4-step process. The first block is build tension and create interest. The second block is resolve that tension with the text. The third block is equip the listener to apply it. And the fourth block is inspire and cast vision. So when you put all those things together, you really only have 4 things to do in any given message. And so you're making 4 major transitions and a lot of minor transitions in the middle. So when you're building tension and creating interest at the beginning of the message, if you're looking at Andy Stanley's Me, We, God, You, We framework, which there's a video on this channel about that, just look up how to do Andy Stanley's Me, We, God, You, We method. In that, the me and the we at the beginning of his message is the build tension and create interest, okay? Where you are building and you're creating interest in the topic by building tension, getting everybody to kind of get in with you on, oh yeah, this relates to me, this is a problem for me, this is a question I've had, this is a tension I have, and they're kind of on the hook for the solution. And so you're building that tension, and you just have to transition between building that tension and resolving that tension with the text, or answering the question with the text, or showing how the text of Scripture relates to the problem. Well, that transition, that's a major transition, and you just have to think through that. And when you outline well, you get to that point where you've kind of built all the tension you're going to build, and now you got to jump across the river. You got to build a bridge across the river to get to the next major block, resolve the tension with the text. So often what I like to do is resolve all of that tension with the bottom line, okay? And it doesn't always resolve it. A lot of times it continues to build it. But the point is, I've built the tension, I've created the interest, and I say, you know what this tells me? It tells me, boom, here's my main point. Here's where we're going today. And then that is illustrated and demonstrated by the by the text, which then resolves the tension. So that should not, hopefully that doesn't confuse you. If it does, dig into the resources that I have available at preachingdonkey.com, because a lot of that is explained there and on this channel. But my point, what I want you to hear from this is, my point is, when you're outlining, no matter what outlining method you use, when you're going from one point to the next, when you're going from this scripture to the next point, if you're outlined really well and it makes sense to you and you can see it all on purpose and on paper, then it simplifies the process. If you just have a bunch of pieces, okay? If your messages don't flow, where you just have okay, I'm going to say this, and then I want to say that, and I want to say that, and I think I'm going to do it in this order, transitions are going to be very difficult. It has to make logical sense to you in your head, and it has to flow. And I like to think about the fact that every sermon, like a book, like a movie, like a story, every sermon has to have tension, it has to have a problem, it has to have a question, it has to cause people to wrestle with something. Otherwise, it's not interesting. Okay? And otherwise, it doesn't really show the power of the gospel. It doesn't really show the power of the scripture if there's not some kind of tension that we all feel. It doesn't have to be negative tension. It needs to be something that, oh, okay, I'm interested in hearing more. Okay? I want to hear more of what you have to say. And so when you have that flow of, I'm going to build the tension, I'm going to show how the scripture resolves the tension, and then I'm going to give the listeners the tools they need to apply the truth that they learned from the text, and then I'm going to cast a vision and inspire them to action now that they know what to do and now that they know how the scriptures fall into place. Well, then it becomes easy to tie these pieces together with transitions. And so the biggest thing there is outline really, really thoroughly and well, and make sure it's a logical flow, and keep breaking it down into bigger and bigger chunks, okay? You don't want to look at a message and say, okay, I have 18 major transitions, okay? You might have 18 transitions, But you really only need to have 4 or 5 major ones from sections. And then within those sections, you might have other transitions that you can get more granular on. But again, a transition could be just simply a statement. You know what this tells me? Boom. I've said all these things. You know what this indicates to me? Boom. And I always point to the TV that I have. Okay. Boom. This point, right? That's literally a transition. Well, you know what this says to me? Boom. Okay. It doesn't have to be a big, just now we're going to go to this next idea. Like you could, but you don't have to narrate it. But the point is, if you outline well, it just gives you the tools, it gives you the upfront knowledge to know exactly what to expect in the moment. Okay, so the first thing is rehearse, big time. The second thing is outline well. Number 3, plan transitions for each time you move from one major idea to the other. So this is what I mentioned before. If you've outlined well, you've got your blocks, then just plan it out, okay? All right, how am I going to go? How am I going to transition from this idea to that idea? What am I going to say? How is it going to make sense? Then when you rehearse it, it all makes sense. It all comes together. And then finally, number 4, work them into your notes visually or your presentation media. Here's what I mean by that. So the notes that you have with you while you preach, okay? I preach without notes in a sense. Okay, here's how I preach without notes. I have notes with me. That's why I say in a sense. I have notes on the table, but I walk away from them and I don't refer to them unless I have to. My messages are largely internalized. However, when I glance at my notes, they're color-coded based on the transitions, based on what I call touch points and triggers. I have an article about the notes I have with me while I preach, which you can check out at preachingdonkey.com. And so on my notes, it literally indicates to me exactly where I'm at and where I need to go next. And then I know how to transition from one type of thing to the other. And so for each sermon, I'm not reinventing the wheel. If I'm going from an illustration to a point, I know how to transition that. If I'm going from a point to a text, I know how to transition that. If I'm going from a text to a major point, I know how to transition that. And it comes from practice. You just have to do it and decide what are the ways that make sense to you and work to you. And a lot of it just comes down to trial and error. Try it. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, tweak it and make it better the next time. But if you have it on your notes, in other words, if your notes at a glance give you in the moment exactly what you need to know, how to go from this thought to this thought, then it takes away a lot of the guesswork in the moment. And the reason why I also mentioned presentation media is one of the reasons why I'm able to not have to use my notes as much is I have the onstage TV, okay, so I can point to one major point at a time. Here's the text, here's the point, here's the text, here's the point. But in the room facing me, but nobody else can see it, is a confidence monitor that has my current slide and the next slide. And so I can just glance up at it and know exactly what's coming next without having to refer to my notes. And so those major points, I know how to transition from one point to the other because number 1, I rehearsed. Number 2, I outlined well. Number 3, I planned out my transitions ahead of time. And then finally, number 4, they're worked into my notes if I need them and my presentation media. And so I just wanted to give that to you because so many of you have asked about that. I think if you do those 4 things and really in reverse order, okay? So rehearsal comes last, right? So you outline first, then plan how you're going to transition, then work them into your notes, and then you rehearse all that, and I think you'll be ready to go, and you'll be ready to get up and preach, and you're not going to be overthinking or thinking too much about the transitions. Now, I want to leave you with one last thing on this topic. Remember, you set the tone. Okay, this is true with anything when you're presenting or public speaking. You set the tone from start to finish about how people feel about what you're saying. Okay, so if you're rattled and confused and overthinking, oh gosh, how am I going to get from this thought to the next? It's going to put people in a bad place. They're going to be kind of apprehensive with you. But if you roll with it and you confidently move from one thing to the next, then they're going to go with you. They're not going to think anything of it because, again, you're setting the tone and they're going to assume that it's purposeful, that it's intentional. And so be as intentional and purposeful and well planned out as you can, but then get up there and don't overthink it, right? Make things happen how you want them to happen, and then review your film, watch your game film, okay? Watch the video of you preaching, see how it went, and see how you can do it better next time, okay? Move from one thing to the next confidently, and the people will come with you. That's just the way it works. And so I don't want you to overthink it, but I do want you to have a good plan. And again, rehearse, outline well, plan out how you're going to do it, and then work them into your notes. And I think you'll be well on your way to transitioning purposefully and well. Hope that was helpful to you. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Again, my name is Lane. This is Preaching Donkey. Grab your free 21-day guide to creating killer sermons at preachingdonkey.com/21days, and I will see you in the next video.